Okay, great. Thank you for joining us today. Today we're going to run through our P6-Scrubber. I am joining you actually today from Montreal. I'm Nicole Jardin. I'm the CEO of Emerald. And with me doing the heavy lifting is Sue Familia, joining us from Wyoming. And she is going to show you the software in action. Okay, so we actually have owners, engineering companies, and contractors using P6-Scrubber currently to deal with their P6 projects that they get imports on. So let's touch on why we built this software. So we built this software probably in earnest about 5 to 6 years ago because we were using it for our clients. So when we were helping them load things in, we were using this sort of function. We have a bit of it in our P6 loader tool, some simple cleaning, but we realized we needed to go further because we had so many clients that were carrying secondary databases to do cleanups or going into the XERs and modifying them, which is not a good idea. We've seen some pretty bad results when people have done that. So really trying to deal with keeping their P6 database clean and finding, as they always do, very creative solutions to deal with that. So before I go any further, I'm going to ask you, how do you deal with P6 projects from your outside companies? How do you deal with that? So the common things that we've seen is they have a secondary database. We also see them, as I mentioned, modifying the XERs, or they import them into their current database and start cleaning them up, okay? Which can be very dangerous. I'm going to touch on why you need to think about that. So if you want to go ahead and answer that, I'll share the results. And we share the results on our website too of all these polls that we do during these webinars. So if you're interested to see how people do it, go to our website on the Scrubber page, and it's at the end of the page. We share all these and we gather the results and share them. Okay, so I'll show the responses. So let me touch on why you got to be a little bit wary on doing your imports, okay? So if you do a lot of importing, let's say you're an owner's rep and you're importing contractor schedules, or if you are a contractor and you export your schedule and you give them to an owner, okay? There could be some really good things that you can do to make that process smoother for yourself as well as for them. You've probably seen that when you import, you can have some problems with the data. Okay, so you could have codes that are duplicated. You could have things that get overwritten, like calendars, which can be very problematic because that could change your schedule. So when you're importing, the importing functions existing in P6 don't go nearly far enough on protecting your database. So that's really why we built the Scrubber, to go much further, give you much better controls, give you auditability to see what you're changing so you know what you're trying to do. Now, of course, depending on how often you import, it's going to have a big bearing or a lesser bearing. So I'm going to ask another quick question. How much time do you spend cleaning up schedules each month? So it's going to vary considerably. We have one client who really was our launch partner for the Scrubber with the interface. They import 50 to 60 schedules every month. They're essentially running an owner's rep group. They're importing a lot, and they have a lot of criteria for their contractors to follow. So of course, in their case, having a nice, consistent standard tool is critical. And it's really changed the dynamic of what they're able to do. So it's going to vary. But certainly, if you're in that position, looking at the Scrubber is something definitely worthwhile. So let me touch on how it works. And then Sue is going to show it in action. So we have a file, and it could be a XER. It could be an XML. So it can also be a Microsoft project files. That's a new feature that we added in the last version in the last few months. because we have lots of owner groups who do both. They have Microsoft Project as well as P6. So you have a file, you set up how you want to handle that file in what we call a scrubbing definition. Okay, and that definition can be saved, sort of like a layout. You can save it and you can reuse it. Okay, so you don't have to run through the definition every time. So that's super handy. But you, of course, want to check it every time. It will clean up other bits and pieces. So some of you might have been experiencing over the last few years the POBS and the risk types. So we clean that up. We can also clean that up, some of that stuff up in our P6 loader. Okay, so we've got that in both tools, and we clean up or allow you to check calendars. Okay, calendars are a big one. You don't want any colliding in calendars because it could change your schedule, and that would not be a good thing. Now, then we let you check all the other bits and pieces that are global data in particular. User-defined fields, codes at all the levels, so project, activity, resource, and cost code validations as well. Now we can do other validations like project ID, project names. Okay, so there's things like that as well we can validate and let you deal with it. Okay, so the dealing with it we allow is scrubbing it, so getting rid of it completely, remapping it. Sue's going to show you that. Okay, so instead of leaving it as it is, you remap it into an existing code. So that's huge. That's huge because then you can keep your reporting nice and clean. And if some of you are taking data out into other systems like Power BI to do reporting, Tableau, that sort of thing, it's really important to keep your data nice and clean. Okay, so if you're doing some of that, you should definitely attend our P6 Reporter webinar because we show you a lot of the functions and great things that we've already built for other clients. Okay, so let me hand it over to Sue. We're going to let her show us in detail how this works. And if you have any questions, chat them in to the question room and I'll tackle them while Sue's running through. Okay, I handed it over to you, Sue.
Okay, I'm just going to share my screen here so that you can see the tool and we can start going through. Okay, so we have two versions of P6-Scrubber. One is a standalone version, which is not connected to any database at all. However, as we were working with clients, we found that it was helpful and actually pretty much a great idea to be able to connect it to your live database. So we also have a live version that's connected to one database or several databases, depending on how many databases you have, that you can connect to so that you can see the data that's in that database while you're scrubbing that file or setting up the definition. So you can connect it to several different databases. And I'm just going to go into this one here. And then you would sign in with your P6 credentials because it does use the API or web services to connect to that database, which is going to essentially respect any type of security you have in that database. So the tool is fairly simple to operate. We have the definitions area here on the side. And if I start going down, we have each kind of subject area that we're dealing with. So in the way of project and WBS, we have our codes. So essentially each window works very similarly. So in the case of a code, and actually I'm going to use the example of an activity code. First of all, you're going to enable that particular scrub. So you can choose which ones you want to run and which ones you don't. So you enable the scrub, and then you have the ability to go in and identify what you want to check on your XER XML. So if I were setting this up just on the fly from scratch, what I could do is I could add my information here, and this is going to be a code. And so I can put the code type name in there. I could put what scope it is. So I have the ability to identify whether it's going to be a global or a project scope. I'm going to do global, excuse me. And then we select an action. So do we want to keep that, or do we want to scrub it out of there? Do we want to remove it? So I'm going to go ahead and say I want to keep this one. And then I'm going to identify what I want it to map to, or what it should match to in my database. So when I open this up and I look for vendor here, I see that I already have, well, I have several vendors actually. So I want to map it to the vendor they already have. So if I have a match in my database, it gives me a green check mark here. If I wanted to handle this code from the global level and roll it down to the project level, I can check mark this little box, and it's going to take this vendor code, and it's going to roll it to the project code. Now I don't have to put a project ID in because it already knows in the file which project or projects this code is associated with. So it's going to go ahead and do that for me. Now, I also have the ability to check my dictionaries as well. Now, we all know in the case of a dictionary, a lot of times we have multiple values that need to go into a dictionary. So what you can do if you're setting this up from scratch and not using any of the assistance that I'm going to show you here in a moment is you can actually use a bulk edit here, which is going to allow you to copy and paste in your dictionary, whether that be from a P6 database or, well, that did not do what I wanted to. Whether it be from a P6 database, or if I wanted to go in and let me just do this and take it from my P6 database itself. So I could copy my dictionary, and I could go back into P6-Scrubber and I can paste it here. So it's going to give me some options. First of all, I have a header that came in, so I want to remove my first row header, and I don't need this color in there, so I can say I want to remove that. Then when I apply it, it's going to go ahead and it's going to bring those all in for me, and then I can select my action and etc. So really easy if you're doing this from scratch. Now, um, other options that you have are to scrub extra dictionary values. So if I did not want to bring in anything other than these, let's say an XER has a different dictionary value, I could say that if it's not one of these, I want to remove all the other dictionary values. I can do the same thing with the codes. So if I don't define a code in my definition, I can say remove it if it doesn't match anything there. Now, this is okay. We can definitely build our definitions doing it this way. However, with with both versions, what we can do is we can actually import a file and build it from our file. So I'm just going to go in, I'm going to clear out my definition that I have here, and I'm going to import an XER that I already have. And so this is an XER that I'm going to want to handle from either my own database and I'm sending it out, or I am bringing it into my database. I want to import it. So when I apply these, it's going to go in and it's going to show me each one of the values that are in that particular XER. So then I can enable each one. And I have a few different things on a live database that it's going to show me. I can see here that I have a warning sign on my on my district code. Now, the code matches in P6. However, my values don't match. And I can tell that when I hover over it. It's going to tell me what is the issue with this. And so I can see that I have this DISD5 that's coming in. That doesn't match anything in my dictionary for my district. So in a live database, what I can do is I can delete that and I can find the value that I want to remap it to and choose that. And now it's going to remap this value of DIST5 to D5. And then I can go in and I can decide what to do with the rest of it. Now, on user-defined fields, we have essentially the same idea. We can choose what we want to keep and what we want to remove. So I don't want any WBS codes coming in. So I'm going to scrub that one out, and I'm going to mark that I don't want any other WBS codes to come in either. So I've got that marked there. Now I can see I've got something here on my submittal date. And it says a matching value couldn't be found, but there's something, there might be a value that's very close to that is in my database. So I can actually go out and I can click here and it's going to show me something that's very similar. So I could choose that one and have it remapped. So it's going to kind of guide me as I go along. In my codes for my activities, the same goes. So let's say I want mitigations. There's something that matches, that almost matches it. That's a little light bulb here. And so I could go in and I could see what I could map that to. So if you already have some things that have been loaded in with some different maybe prefixes or something like that, you can go in and easily select that. Now with resources, we have a couple of things that we can do. So I've got some that here that have some close matches, and so I'm going to go ahead and remap those to those close matches. And then I'm going to go in and I have a parent resource that's already been set up in P6. And since I'm connected, I can go out and I can find that resource. So I'm going to just put in my resources, and it's going to highlight for me where I want it to go. So I can choose that parent, and then when it scrubs that file, it's going to land these into my parent resource. Units of measure. We also handle units of measure. So in my units of measure, I can see, a lot of times other companies use different abbreviations or what have you, different definitions for units of measure, but they mean the same thing. So I can see here that I don't have a value that matches, but if I go in, I can see a matching value. So my matching value is actually a capital M, and I have a different definition for that value. So I can go in and then pick the definition. So now I can remap it to the same definition I have for cubic meters rather than the one that's in the file itself. I also can handle calendars. So the problem with having global calendars come in with an import is that if you have a global calendar that is the same as a calendar that's already in your database, the definition for that calendar is going to be overwritten by the import. And so we know that a lot of times standard 5-day work week is pretty common in a database. However, that doesn't mean that their standard 5-day work week is the same as your standard 5-day work week. So in most cases, I would say you're going to want to roll these down to the project level. So we can go ahead and roll all these down. And then any other global calendar that comes in after I save this in another XER, I can choose to roll down anything that's not defined as well. So I can choose to do that. Now, in the project calendars, we actually had a client who requested this. They wanted to see what their project calendars were. They had specific calendars that should have been set up at the project level, and they wanted to make sure that those calendars were indeed in that file. So they asked for us to have an informational section for project calendars. So you don't do any remapping or anything with that. It's just informational. And then we have the ability to do resource calendars. So when we do our resource calendars, we can go in and again, I have a match, a similar match, and it's going to tell me that. So now it's going to remap that resource calendar to this new resource calendar name. With roles, it's very similar to the resources. In fact, it's almost exactly the same. So I can enable it. I can go down and deal with the ones that I have here. It looks like I don't have any, but maybe I wanted to prefix this. And I want that to be created in my P6, in my database. Now it still says it doesn't match, but I can go over here and I can say, I know it doesn't match. I'm going to let it come in anyway. So that's going to give P6-Scrubber the go ahead to go ahead and do that. So I could do the same with the rest of these. Oops. And go ahead and let those come in. Now, as with resources, with roles, we can do the same thing. We can map them to a parent role. So I can choose that parent role, and then it's going to land those in that parent role. We can also handle cost accounts. So if you needed to remap any cost accounts, if you wanted to completely remove them, you could do that. In this case, they all match, so I'm going to allow them to come in the way that they are. Now, another thing that happens with our with XERs and XMLs is that there is an established OBS. You have to have a, a responsible manager on a project, but it's not usually a responsible manager that's in your database. So instead of creating a new OBS element or responsible manager, we can actually go in and we can pick which responsible manager we want it assigned to. So when we import it, it's not going to create a new one. It's going to use that one. And then wherever you're importing that into, you already have your responsible manager set for that project. Now, sometimes you just want to do a quick scrub on a file. You have some very simple things you want to do. Maybe you want to choose, and this is the simple scrub area. And you can use this in conjunction with the other options up at the top. But you can choose to prefix project codes, global activity codes, resources, etc. You can choose to prefix every one of those that comes in with the file. Or you can choose to not import them as well. You can set a common separator. So maybe I want a dash between all of my prefixes, and then I want to start putting prefixes on all of them. Now, with my global activity code, I have another option. I can choose to roll down all of my global activity codes. I could also prefix it if I wanted to, but at the project level, it's usually pretty apparent that it belongs to this project. I can also do that with my global calendar. So I can choose to roll down any global calendar that comes in. And then we have several different things that we can choose to not import and or prefix them if we wanted to. So I've set up everything I want to on this particular definition. And I want to use it over and over for this this client or this whomever you're getting the project or from. I can go into the Scrubber definition area and I can choose to save this. So when I go to save this, I would name it. I could put a note on it if I wanted to clarify, what this was for. And I have 3 different levels that I can actually save it to. I can save it just to myself so that I'm the only one that can use this. I could save it to global so anyone could use it. Or we have this team piece in here. Say perhaps I have a particular team that is working on a particular project, and I want to only have this team be able to see it, but I want everybody on the team to be able to see it. I can choose team, and then um, just depending on what team I want to share this with, I can choose the team that I want to share it with, and then I can save that. So once it's saved, I can see that it's saved up here. I have my definition and its name is example. It also tells me the last project that I imported, the project that's in there. And once I have a definition saved, I'm ready to go ahead and scrub a file. So what if I have just logged in here and I don't have any definitions applied? So I'm just going to go in and I'm going to say I want a new definition. So I don't have a definition in here, but I want to scrub a file. I've already made my definition and saved it. I can go in and I can actually load the definition. So I can choose the definition I want and I can load that. Now I'm able to use this definition on a file to scrub. So I go into the scrub and I browse to the file that I want to scrub. I could even do 2 files at a time if I want to. Say this is from the same contractor and I want to scrub both of those files. And then I could process them. And that's going to tell P6-Scrubber to go out and process those files and make the changes that according to the definition. So once I do that, I have the option to view a report. And when you're building your definitions, you're probably going to want to view that report. And maybe even when you're just scrubbing, just to make sure that everything that you wanted to handle got handled there. So in our report, we have a summary area here that's going to show us for each one of our definition or each one of our things that we defined, if we had any changes or if we didn't. If we did have changes, it's going to essentially tell you what happened during those changes. So in the case of my project user-defined field, it kept 6 of them and it removed 1. In the case of my global calendar, it kept 3, it removed 3, and it changed 3. So essentially remapped them or renamed them, something like that. Now, if I scroll down, it's going to give me basically dig into a little bit more detail about that particular scrub. So in my case of my project code, the gray boxes are my definition. That's what was set up. And then as I go down, I have these boxes with color in them that are showing me what actually happened when that scrub was run. So I can see in my district, I had a dictionary change. And down here in my district dictionary, it's showing me that that district 5 or that DIST 5 was remapped to D5. So it's going to show me everything it did during that particular scrub. If everything looks good, I can go and download my results. So this is going to be my clean file. If not, I would go back. I would tweak my my definition, and then I could resave it. Just going to go ahead and so I'm going to open up my download, and we get 2 things when we download the results from Scrubber. We have our clean file, the one that was scrubbed, all the changes were made to it, which has been appended by the date and time that it was scrubbed. And I also have a copy, an XML, or sorry, an HTML copy of that report. So let's say we wanted to give feedback to a contractor um, that we had particular specifications for, and we found some issues during that scrub. We could share this report with them, or portions of it. So we could copy and paste pieces of this report and share that back to the contractor and show them, this is what we found, and these need to be corrected. So once we've downloaded that, we can then go and we can import into our P6 database. So I already have imported a file. Now, by default, P6-Scrubber will create some indicators, kind of giving you an accounting of what has happened during that scrub, right in kind of a dashboard type of layout. So I can see that my project ID was fine. It matched the uh, it matched the pattern that I had, and I'll show you that in a minute. It's telling me that I had project code types that were changed. I also had dictionary types that were changed. And then it's showing me that I had a district code that came in. I can see that it was D5 and it matches. And I also have one that was created on my schedule status. I had a new value that came in. So it's giving me that red X. It's showing me changes on my user-defined fields, etc. Now, I also have a report, a copy of that report as a notebook that has come in with that project. So again, I can see everything that was changed on that project when I scrubbed it. So it's going to maintain that here with the project. Now, this is a good idea if you maybe have to, if you have a claim or something, you have a specific accounting of what happened with this file when you scrubbed it. So you can show that really, except for names and maybe moving of levels of the data, nothing got changed specifically in that file when you scrubbed it. So you're going to have some history there. Now at the activity level, it's also going to bring in some of these indicators. So essentially, I can tell that my vendor code was really clean. I didn't have any changes on that. However, on my work type here, I had some that came in, and it looks like some were removed. So it's alerting me to the fact that there are no values now here in these particular activities. Now, in my discipline, it's showing me that I had some values that were created. So those are those red X values. And I also had some that were removed. And so again, I might want to take a look at those and see if I should have some values there, and maybe what they should be. Um, it's also giving me accounting on my cost accounts, and I can see that my cost accounts came in and everything looked good on my cost accounts as well. Now, in the case of my resources came in and I put them underneath my scrubber uh, parent here. And so when it brought in all of those resources, and remember, I wanted to put an SCR in front of those. And so I have my prefix on those as well. Now, going back to the project ID check, as well as the indicators and the notebook, we do have some checks on those that we can define. So, in the way of project IDs and names, or activity IDs and names, if you had um, a specific pattern that you have set out in your specifications for a contractor, you have it in your contract, you could check immediately if a project ID is fitting the pattern that you're defining there. So I can define this in a number of different ways. I can put a contains, a starts with, an ends with, but probably more helpful is going to be a simple pattern. So a simple pattern is going to allow me to define what this should look like, what the project, in this case, the project ID pattern should look like. So I'm going to select that I want a number or a letter, excuse me, and I want it to be uppercase, and there should be 2 uppercase letters to begin with. Now that should be followed by 5 digits. So I'm going to go to my number and I'm going to say it should have 5 numbers after it. Now I'm expecting to see a dash. So I can go to specific text and I can say it should be a dash. Whoops, not a star, a dash on that. And then after that, it can be anything. It's going to be anything, and it could be any length. So I can say now I'm expecting to see any unlimited number of characters. So then I can apply. Now, as I built this out, I can see that my test pattern is telling me that this doesn't match because I don't have anything in there. However, if I opened this up and I were to test one of my project IDs, I could then see that, okay, yes, I have this defined correctly. It's giving me the green light and telling me that that this is indeed defined properly. So we have the ability to check this. It's not going to remap anything on these IDs and names, but it is going to allow you to quickly check that they adhered to their specifications that you put out there for them. Now, another area that we have is our general area. Now, and this is where we have the ability that maybe you don't want those indicators to come in when you import that file. Maybe you're never going to look at those indicators. You can turn that off and P6-Scrubber will not create those indicators in your file. You could do the same thing with a notebook. So if you didn't want that notebook to come in, you could certainly turn that off as well. Now, another thing that we can do, let's say you are either sharing a file from your database or you are bringing in a file from another database that is not the same version of P6 that you run. Now, with XERs, this can pose a problem because it matters what version that those XERs are in. I could go in and I can basically save it for another version of P6. So I can go and let's say I am exporting from version 20-12. However, my whoever's receiving the file is actually still on 18. I could select 18. It's going to convert this file to that version of file. And then when I send it out and they import it, they're going to be successful in importing that XER into their version 18 database. Now, if you export in a lower version, you can import into a higher version with no problem. But the problem comes in is when you are exporting at a lower version of that particular of P6. So this is a way that you could change that version.
You mean a higher version, I think, Sue.
Okay, yes, you're right. Did I say? Yeah. I'm sorry. Got mixed up there. Got mixed up there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, so the idea is, let's say you're on version 21, and that's not a good example. Let's say you're on version 18, but you received a version 19, 20, 21 file. I think that's where the problem comes in, right? Am I saying that correctly?
Right.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Okay. So if you're on the latest version, this is less of an issue. But if your group decides to hold back on upgrades, which we have lots of clients, they wait a year or two for upgrades. this is where this can be handy to have the ability to override the version.
Yeah, that's correct. And if you're sending this out to somebody,
Yeah, good point.
and you want to to decrease that version,
Yeah,
you certainly can do that for them
yeah,
as when you send out the file.
yeah, good point. Makes it easier, more seamless. They don't end up with any struggles with it. Yeah, good point.
Right.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
Okay. So I want to do an example of a Microsoft project XML. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to do a new definition. I'm going to clear everything out of here, and I'm going to import an XML file that is a Microsoft project. Now, with Microsoft Project, you don't get near the information you do from a P6 XML or anything like that. They just don't have the depth of data in them. However, sometimes you do get a Microsoft project file, and you want to make sure that that data that's coming in from that file is still clean, so that you can, it's not going to pollute your database with some unwanted data that's in there. So you can import that in, you can apply it. There isn't anything at the project level for these four XMLs that come from Microsoft Project. Um, there may be activity codes, but they're pretty rare. But you do have user-defined fields that come in. So you could choose what to do with that user-defined field coming in with your your Microsoft project. So you could remap it. You could allow it to create it. Uh, you could see if there, in this case, there's some sort of close to mapping. So you can remap these in that case. You also have resources that come in. So you can do the same thing with the resources that come in with a file. You could choose to put it under a particular parent resource. You could remap it to a new ID. You could also use your simple scrub here. And let's say you want for all of your resources, you wanted to prefix them so you know that they're coming in from that Microsoft project file. You can certainly prefix them, all of them, in the simple scrub area. It also is going to let you take a look at the calendars. Now, no global calendars come in with a Microsoft project. It does come in at the project level, but maybe you want to take a look at that Microsoft project uh, file or calendar. You can see what you have there. Um, the rest of it is not really pertinent to Microsoft projects, but you do sometimes have that need. And we could also, again, select that OBS that comes in with it, um, so that when you do import it, if there is anything that's associated with that, I don't think there is with Microsoft Project, but if there is, you could certainly make sure that it does have that responsible manager in there. So we have given the ability in P6-Scrubber to also handle a Microsoft Projects XML files. Won't do the MSX, I believe it is, but it will handle an XML file. So before I hand back over to Nicole, are there questions or something, Nicole, that I forgot to show?
No, I don't think so. And there aren't any questions yet. So I think we're in good shape.
Okay, then I will hand it back over to you,
Okay.
or let you take control, I guess.
Okay, will do. Thanks, Sue. Okay, just coming up. Okay, will we be going into ETL after this at noon. I'm not sure what that question means. Yeah, I had this in my calendar to start it when I started it. And you're right, the original plan was this was supposed to be at noon Eastern. So we were probably going to finish here, but we might go longer. Yeah, there was an ETL webinar at 11 and Scrubber at 12. ETL. Sorry, I'm not sure what that is. So if you want to ask again, we'll see if we can answer it. Extract, transform, and load. Extract, transform, and load. Well, this is what Scrubber is, really. It's extracting, transforming, and loading. So I think that's what Sue was trying to show you. So the transforming is what we call remapping. And then the loading, she showed you how to load it back in. So hopefully that was clear. We might have just used slightly different terminology as she was running through. And then, of course, we've got the report that helps you know what happened. So you can keep that report for each one of the loads. We keep the latest one up in P6, but you can keep each one. Okay, so let's just touch on some of the feedback that we've been getting from our clients. And as I said, we've got contractor clients. We've got, hey Sue, could you mute? I think I'm hearing some feedback. I'm not sure if it's from you. It might be from somebody else, but so we've got contractors, we've got owner groups, and we've got engineering companies helping owner groups with it. So we do have kind of the right cross section of users. And what we've got as feedback is, of course, the ability to look at a schedule very, very quickly. Okay, so if you have specifications and requirements, this gives you a very quick feedback loop. And the report is also very helpful. Now, if you want to go further and analyze a schedule, let them know where their logic is lacking and things like that, then you need to look at our other tool, our P6QA tool. Okay, but giving them very quick feedback on whether they're hitting your specifications is very, very good out of P6-Scrubber. And then in terms of how quick and easy it is to use. So Sue showed you setting one up. Once you've got that definition set up, you can reuse it every time you get a schedule import from that same group. Then you just check it and you'll see whether there's anything new or changed, and then you can run it. Okay, so you can keep using the same version and iterate through it. So it really works well. And of course the output. So it keeps your system clean. And more what we're finding, our clients are using things like P6 Reporter to get their data into Tableau, Power BI, Business Objects, Oracle Data Visualization, Oracle BI Publisher, those sorts of corporate reporting tools. And you need to have nice, tidy data to do that well. Okay, if you're reporting on a vendor, the vendor needs to have one name, not 6 different names. Or you just won't get the right reporting. Okay, so the point with this is it keeps your system clean, which means the data output is much better and much more accurate, and that helps your management get those decisions being made well. Okay. Okay. All right, so hopefully you saw some interesting things. This is just one of our P6 add-on tools. We've got a lot of them. So definitely, if you go to our webinar page, you'll see some of the others. And if you go to our tools section on our website, you'll see the tools we have. So I mentioned P6 Reporter, P6QA. Another one is P6 Calculator, which works fantastic. You can do all sorts of extra calculations, automations, within P6. So we've got as an example, we've got a client who needs automatic logic building components, so they don't have to keep rearranging logic. So we've got things like that we've done with Calculator. Okay, so explore some of those other webinars, and if you're struggling with updating, definitely look at our caps and taps tools, because those are updating tools, make updating super fast. So look at some of the other tools, and hopefully you'll see some things that can really provide a lot of benefit to your team using P6. The reason we have so many tools is we've had programmers on our team from the very beginning of Emerald, which has been for 27 years now. We've been working with P6 as a partner. And prior to that, since I graduated from engineering, I worked with P3 back in the day, SureTrack, Expedition, and so on. So that is why we have such a vast toolkit, because our focus right from the beginning was on integration. Okay, I had done 5 years in the claims and disputes business, and I understood how important it was to manage that data. So integrations were really our focus from the very beginning. Okay, so I'm going to share a poll. If there is a way that you would like us to follow up, you can let us know by answering one of these questions. It just helps us make sure we're following up with you in the most appropriate way, depending on where you're at. You might see something that would be really helpful for your group, or you just might want to keep learning, which is fine. Just let us know, and we'll keep following up as appropriate. Okay, so we didn't have any questions. Let me just see if there are any yet. Okay, I don't see any yet. So hopefully that means it's very clear. If you've done a lot of importing, you understand, I'm sure, how tricky this can be and how frustrating it can be in terms.
So we did have one question
Oh,
about
okay.
P6. I answered it, but
Okay.
just to clarify,
Okay.
we had a question that is if P6-Scrubber
Okay.
came along with P6 Professional.
Oh, okay.
And it actually is an add-on tool that was developed by Emerald, and so it does require a subscription to run this P6-Scrubber tool.
Yeah.
And then a question about the video, and yes, we will provide the video as long as everything renders okay and all that once it's complete.
Yeah. Yeah, so just to go a little further on the subscription. So we sell P6-Scrubber by the number of scrubs. Okay, so we've got different package levels. So the upper package is unlimited scrubs per year. So if you do a lot of loading, that would be the one to look at. And on the lower end, it's a 5 package. So you buy 5 scrubs, you can use it on five times. And then if you need more, you can up your subscription and buy more. Okay, so you basically the pricing goes down obviously by the number of scrubs you buy. So if you're interested in the small 5-pack, I think it's $100 per scrub, and then it goes down rapidly from there. Okay, so again, take a look. If you're interested, send us an email. You've got Sue's email, and we can discuss the different subscription that would make sense for your group. Okay, so it just really depends on what your group does. So the smallest package would be the 5-pack starter pack, and Sue can work on that with you if you're interested in such a thing. Okay.
And one more question.
Yeah.
If it is a subscription, would it work with a standalone version not connected to the database? And yes, it will. I showed you the live version, but you can have a standalone version that you can just scrub everything without that connection to a database and still import that clean file.
Yeah. And the reason we did it that way first was for consultants. Let's say you work with 4 or 5 different clients and you don't necessarily get the ability to hook to their database. That's why we've got that standalone version. Okay. And so the standalone or the small starter pack, 5-pack, can work on the database or standalone. So both of them will work standalone or hooked onto a database. What is the difference between P6 Loader and P6-Scrubber? Okay, so P6 Loader, there are a few features that are similar because we had put them into the loader way back for looking at prefixing and things like that. But P6 Loader goes way, way beyond in terms of accessing data in P6 and importing and exporting basically using Excel. So let's say you want it to manage your activity codes, your project codes, you want it to build lists, you want it to create projects, you want it to clean up logic, etc., etc. So it is a tool that lets you upload and extract all sorts of data in P6 via Excel. Okay, so if you do a lot of data management or you need to clean up your database because it's a mess from 30 years of using it or whatnot, P6 Loader would be the tool to look at. So I think it should be on our webinar schedule. And if it's not yet,
It is.
Okay.
August 31st
Okay.
is our next P6 Loader webinar, and it is in the evening. It's at 7 p.m.
Okay.
Mountain Time.
Okay.
So depending on where you are in the world.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So really, if you really want to do a lot of Excel data management, or if you want to look at integration, but your group might not be ready to do all the programming, right? P6 Loader can be a great way to start to organize your thoughts around how to do an integration. Because most tools can export data into a CSV, which can be brought into Excel. Okay, so that's another thing we've done a lot with P6 Loader. So, I'm working with a client right now and we're building out, they're a drilling company. We're building out their projects. So they have the list of projects in another software tool. So we're pulling that list, we're hooking it onto templates we built in P6, and we're going to create hundreds of projects in a matter of a few hours at most. Okay, so there's all sorts of great things you can do with Loader. So join one of our webinars. The problem with the webinar will always be that we can't show every possibility because there's just so many. But we'll get Joshua. We'll get you invited to the P6 Loader. And
I did put the link in
okay,
for the registration as well.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Sue.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so just register on any of those. And if you have any other questions about our tools, just reach out and we'll be happy to answer them. Okay, so why don't we leave it at that for today? I'll stop.